Hi, I'm John Newton, aka Snap-on John 100, and this is the beginning part of a series on primitive fire making, specifically bow and drill. We're going to be editing in some older videos for different sections, so there's going to be a lot of cut-ins, so you'll be able to see at different times of year, the different weather conditions and things like that. We're going to start off with the basics of fire, specifically the triangle of fire. And there's three parts to it: heat, oxygen, which is in air, and fuel, which typically is going to be wood. We're only going to deal with that just to analyze any issues we might have. If you're having trouble getting an ember to burst into, to glow, or if you're having trouble with your fire lay, you just want to ask yourself, what am I missing? Is there one leg of this triangle that's absent here, when you just want to try to troubleshoot that. And I found fuel is seldom the issue, but oxygen and heat rears its ugly head a lot of times. Oxygen, in my opinion, is the #1 cause that people have trouble with their getting an ember in when they're making a bow and drill fire. If you get a lot of smoke here and you just can't seem to get a glowing ember, check to make sure that you're getting plenty of oxygen. Is the width of the notch wide enough? I like to chamfer the front end to it gives you even more oxygen. Look for things like that to help you determine whether you're getting enough oxygen. Most of the time, if you're not getting an ember, it's because of lack of oxygen, and the culprit almost every time is something in this notch. You want the notch, you can make the notch as big as you can, but you don't want it so big that this chips out and the spindle jumps out. But you can go up to that point. Also, in your fire lay, you want to make sure that your fire lay is built in such a way that you're not smothering it out. You don't want to just keep piling wood on and having everything all compressed and smother your fire out either. You want to keep it airy, have a lot of oxygen flowing through your fire set, like while you're building it from your kindling up. And don't put more wood on until the fire is already burning up through that material to the surface. Then you can add more wood on top of that. Heat is the third leg of the triangle, and in a bow and drill, the heat is generated by the friction of the spindle against the hearth board. And as you can see, that's burned right there. This is the friction that produces the heat for that. So you want to make sure you do everything you can to maximize the heat between the spindle and the fireboard. Once you get your ember, you want to make sure that your ember is large enough and long-lasting enough to be able to drive all the moisture out of your bird's nest or tender bundle. You want to watch out for what I also call the heat stealers. I'm going to give you a short little physics lesson if you'll indulge me here at this point. Heat always travels from a warmer body to a cooler body, and cold is really defined as the absence of heat, and heat energy is what moves. Cold doesn't do anything. So you can there's two forms of heat that that you can measure. One is measurable, you can measure with a thermometer. The other one is called hidden or latent heat, and that's the one that is the culprit a lot of times that's stealing heat out of your set. Whenever water vapor, or whenever water transfers states from a liquid to a vapor, heat is absorbed into the system. So what I mean by that is, when you get your precious little ember and you put it in your bird's nest, if your bird's nest is too damp, that whole time while you're blowing on it and the ember is growing and glowing, all the smoke and moisture the liquid is being turned into a vapor and burning off the bird's nest. That whole time that's happening, heat is being absorbed out of the system, so it's actually, there's a cooling process. If it's cooled enough, you'll actually, finally the ember will just go out and nothing will happen. So that's why that's so important. Likewise, if you have moisture in your wood while the heat is building up and you're drilling through your hearth board, the water is being changed from a liquid to a vapor, and so this area here is actually being cooled off by that process. So until that's dry enough, then it won't get hot enough and actually to form an ember. The other thing you want to do is when you're making your fire lay, you want to insulate it from the cold, damp ground by putting either wood down or bark or some other substance to just insulate it so that it's not having the cold ground sucking heat away from your system also. The other main point is fires have to be built. You have to start with a tinder bundle, which is fine, fluffy material. You get that going, then you add that with a toothpick to pencil lead size. Oh, we have a cameo appearance from Grady. But you have a toothpick, a pencil lead to toothpick size, then you move up to pencil size, and once you've got that going, then you start adding your fuel wood, which is basically thumb size up to wrist size. So you're actually building this up slowly while it's burning and the fire's getting larger and larger. Just like building the fire lay, you've got to build your bird's nest or tinder bundle. So at the very base of your tinder bundle, you use the woody, more fibrous material. One of my favorites is the bark off the grapevine. That material doesn't catch a spark, but once you've got flame, that burns really well and for a long time. Next, on top of the base layer is the bulk of the bird's nest, and that's going to be the stringy, dry, fibrous grasses and inner bark from like poplar or cottonwood, a lot of trees like that type of material, birch bark. Then on top of that layer, you've got your finest layer, and that's typically the fluffiest material that you can get, most flammable. One of the things I like to put in that layer is finely shredded cedar bark, because cedar bark is a coal extender. So when you put your ember right in that spot and you fold your bird's nest around it, that coal transfers to the cedar bark and actually makes the cedar bark turn into a glowing larger ember. That's why we call them a coal extender. So you have to build the bird's nest also. They don't work if you just throw some stuff together and then put a coal in it and then blow on it. It has to be carefully designed. Next, I'm going to start with the gathering and preparing the material for the bird's nest. So I'm going to be editing in some videos right here. Alright, now I'm going to be showing you how I put together a bird's nest. I brought a piece of cottonwood bark. This is stripped off of dead cottonwood. And I just wanted to show you what I was talking about, taking the inner bark. As you can see how fibrous this is. The inner bark is this part right here that strips out. Okay, that's the material that I like best for bird's nest. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the base layer. I didn't have any grapevine bark, but it looks real similar to this. This is more inner bark, but it hasn't been processed hardly at all. It's just been pulled out. And this is pretty much what grapevine looks like, but it's not as stringy. So I start with a base layer of something solid like this. It's best to just try to sort of tie it in a bundle if you can. Okay, this is the base layer. Just sort of folding it in on itself. Alright. And I've got an example of this is what you get when you pull and start to get the bark off the shredded inner bark. It's similar to this. This isn't processed. I'm not going to deal with that, but I just want to show you what it goes from this to that. But what you put next is I've got this is right here is pretty much slightly processed. This right here is slightly processed inner bark. As you can see, it's very fibrous. I lay down a layer of that, and then the next layer, this is really highly processed inner bark. As you can see, it looks more like a mouse or a rat's nest. Very fibrous and broken down, much more than this part is. This is the part that you can, if you want, you can add some. This is birch bark. It's got betulin in it. You can add some birch bark to this. It's not necessary because this will burn very well. But if you want to get an extended burn time, you can put some birch bark on there. I would put that on top of the slightly processed, and then on top of that part, I put, this is the finest shredded inner bark. You've got the bulk of the nest here of slightly processed material, and then the next layer right here, this is the part that you're going to have burst into flame first. This is the very shredded inner bark. You put that down. I could put an ember on that, but if you want to do it totally foolproof, this is cedar bark that I was talking about, this shredded cedar bark. This is the coal extender. You get this shredded up. You don't even need this much. Put part of it back. Just take this, and this is the little pocket that you put. Let me give you a better view of it. There is the spot that you put your coal. And then you take it, once you've got the coal in there, you just take your fingers and fold it on upon itself, just like this. And then you blow into here while you're holding it. You blow right into that. That's the pocket where the coal extender is. You blow into that, and you want to have it held tight enough that it doesn't burn real fast. It starts smoldering, because what you want that to do is you want the ember to start smoldering into the shredded cedar bark and turn that into a giant smoldering cherry, and that will be so hot that it will heat up all the rest of the bird's nest. That's when you'll get a lot of smoke. Then you start blowing on it more and more, and then that will drive off all the moisture out of the bird's nest. That will blow into flames. As soon as it starts on fire, then you just rotate it, and you've got this, we'll call this the grapevine bark. That will burn through, and that will last a long time because the grapevine is more woody and it will catch fire real easily, but it burns for an extended amount of time while you're putting your other kindling on top. But that's how you do it. You build it up, starting with the most coarse material on the bottom. You can even put sticks down there, and then you gradually get finer and finer until you finally make the very tiny pocket, and that's sort of where the egg would be if it was a bird's nest. That's how you do it.